The date is March 14, 1945. A lone Avro Lancaster bomber taxis onto a runway in Lincolnshire, England, its landing gear straining under the immense weight it carries. Inside the aircraft's cavernous hold hangs a bomb weighing more than some fighter planes, a 22,000-pound behemoth of hardened steel and Torpex explosive. The pilot, squadron leader C.C. Calder, is acutely aware that his aircraft is transporting a weapon that 5 American B-17 Flying Fortresses could not lift, even if chained together. This is not mere propaganda or national rivalry, but a matter of pure mathematics, engineering reality, and a fundamental difference in the British and American approaches to the bomber war over Europe. The American bomber crews didn't just assess their aircraft's capabilities in terms of raw weight capacity. They also considered the quantity and coverage of the bomb loads. The iconic B-17G, the most common variant flying over Germany in 1945, could carry a maximum of 8,000 pounds of bombs on short-range missions. However, for deep penetration raids into the heart of Germany, the actual bomb load had to be reduced to around 4,000 to 6,000 pounds to account for the fuel needed to reach the targets and return safely. Interestingly, if 5 B-17s worked together, they could theoretically deliver between 20,000 to 30,000 pounds of ordnance. But the math doesn't tell the whole story. Those bombs would be scattered across 5 separate aircraft, rather than concentrated in a single, devastating strike. Distinct aircraft were dispatched from various points in the atmosphere, striking 5 separate impact zones spanning a vast expanse. In contrast, the Lancaster bomber could deliver 22,000 pounds of ordnance onto a single, precisely targeted location. A single aircraft, a single bomb, a single objective. This capability fundamentally reshaped the possibilities of strategic bombing. Certain structures in Nazi Germany proved impervious to area bombardment, not due to a lack of explosive force, but rather an inability to concentrate that force. Submarine pens with 23-foot thick reinforced concrete roofs. Viaducts engineered by Prussian builders in the 1840s, their stone arches so colossal they had endured a century of weathering while continuing to support heavy rail traffic. Underground factories carved. The Lancaster, a versatile aircraft, emerged as a game-changer in the war effort. Conventional bombing tactics proved ineffective against the fortified mountain targets, which shrugged off even the heaviest 1,500-pound bombs. However, the Lancaster's unique capabilities were precisely what the situation demanded. Unlike the B-17s, the Lancaster was designed to accomplish what its counterparts could not even theorize. This aircraft could carry revolutionary weapons that redefined the very concept of aerial bombardment. By March 1945, the Lancaster was tasked with delivering the Grand Slam, a colossal weapon conceived by its designer, Barnes Wallis, even before the war began, but which remained unbuilt due to the lack of a suitable aircraft to transport it. The Lancaster's arrival made the impossible possible. The unthinkable became reality, transforming the final stages of the European conflict in ways that official accounts frequently understate. Barnes Wallis's journey did not begin with a bomb design, but rather a challenge that conventional explosives could not resolve. In 1939, while employed at Vickers Armstrong, Wallis became consumed by a question that haunted his thoughts. How could one destroy a target built to withstand direct strikes? His solution upended traditional bombing strategies, opting to bypass defenses by targeting the ground beneath the structure. Wallis's revolutionary earthquake bomb concept demanded a complete rethinking of Air Force tactics. Aerial bombardment theorists of the early 20th century envisioned a novel approach to explosive ordnance. The concept was both elegant and brutal in its simplicity. By dropping a bomb from an immense altitude, typically around 40,000 feet, they hypothesized that gravity and aerodynamics would transform it into a supersonic projectile. Rather than detonating on impact, the bomb would instead burrow deep underground, punching through soil, clay, and rock much like a bullet through water. Detonating 90 to 100 feet below the surface, the resulting shockwave would behave less like a conventional explosion and more akin to a localized earthquake. The ground would heave and ripple, cracking foundations and causing structures engineered to withstand surface blasts to collapse from underneath, an attack vector their designers had never anticipated. From his initial calculations, Wallace drew upon principles from seismology, mining engineering, and ballistics to test his theory on paper. The envisioned weapon would need to be colossal, far exceeding the size of any existing Allied ordnance. Its design would feature a distinctive elongated, streamlined profile with a hardened steel casing engineered to withstand the immense impact forces that would destroy conventional munitions. Crucially, the bomb would be filled with Torpex, a British explosive compound 50% more potent than TNT, which had already demonstrated its effectiveness in naval mines and depth charges. By 1941, Wallace had finalized the specifications. The bomb would weigh 22,000 pounds, measure 26 feet in length, and require an aircraft capable of. The British Air Ministry examined Wallace's proposal but ultimately set it aside, not because his mathematical calculations were flawed, but due to the limitations of Allied bombers in 1941. At the time, the largest bombs in service weighed only 2,000 pounds, and the development of four-engine heavy bombers like the Short Stirling and Handley Page Halifax was still ongoing. While the concept of an earthquake bomb was theoretically intriguing, it was operationally unfeasible given the aircraft capabilities of the era. Undeterred, Wallace returned to the drawing board and designed a smaller version, the Tallboy, which carried a £12,000 price tag and was within the realm of possibility with the right aircraft modifications. The Tallboy eventually became operational in 1943. June 1944 proved Wallace's theory correct. A single Tallboy bomb, dropped on the Soma railway tunnel in France, penetrated 60 feet of earth and rock before detonating, collapsing the tunnel and trapping a German panzer division racing toward the Normandy beaches. Impressed, the Air Ministry pondered the potential of an even larger 22,000-pound bomb, compared to the 12,000-pound Tallboy. By late 1944, Wallace had his aircraft, the Lancaster, and the manufacturing capacity to build the weapon he had envisioned 5 years prior. The Grand Slam was no longer a theoretical concept but a terrifying reality. The B-17 Flying Fortress, far from a failure, was a masterpiece of engineering. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was engineered with a specific purpose in mind, one that ultimately constrained its capabilities despite the best efforts of its designers. Conceived in the late 1930s, this aircraft was envisioned as a precision bomber capable of striking industrial targets at high altitudes, beyond the reach of most anti-aircraft defenses. The underlying strategy was straightforward: fly above the effective range of flak, employ the Norden bombsight to hit designated objectives, and rely on the defensive firepower of 13 Browning .50 caliber machine guns to fend off interceptors. Every aspect of the B-17's design was tailored to fulfill this mission profile. However, this specialized focus also proved to be a double-edged sword, as it ultimately limited the aircraft's adaptability to changing operational requirements. The B-7 bomber's internal weapons compartment was meticulously engineered to accommodate its formidable ordnance. Spanning approximately 11 feet in length and over 3 feet in width at its maximum, the bomb bay was divided into two distinct sections by a central structural beam. This design choice was not a flaw, but a deliberate measure to support the aircraft's wings during high-stress maneuvers and landings. Removing the beam would have significantly compromised the airframe's structural integrity. The divided bomb bay proved ideal for the B-7's intended payload, allowing for the efficient stacking and release of 500-pound or 1,000-pound general-purpose bombs in precise patterns. However, this configuration also imposed a practical limitation on the maximum size of the munitions that could be accommodated. The B-17 bomber faced significant limitations in its payload capacity due to the weight constraints imposed by its design. The largest single weapon it could carry internally was the 2,000-pound bomb, but even that required removing some of the bomb racks. The aircraft's maximum takeoff weight of 65,500 pounds left little room for fuel, crew, ammunition, and bombs. On a long-range mission to Berlin or beyond, The B-17 needed approximately 2,800 gallons of fuel, weighing around 17,000 pounds. With 10 crew members and their equipment, oxygen systems, and ammunition for the defensive guns, the available bomb load was dramatically reduced from the theoretical maximum of 8,000 pounds. The B-7 bomber's operational range was constrained, suitable only for short-range missions where fuel expenditure was acceptable. During the 1944–1945 air campaigns over Germany, most B-7s carried payloads of 4,000 to 6,000 bombs, as heavier loads would jeopardize their return. The American strategic bombing doctrine did not view this as a limitation, but rather an optimal approach. The USAAF favored massing bomber formations to saturate target areas with numerous smaller munitions, believing that sheer explosive weight over a general zone would ensure critical hits, even if individual B-7s lacked the firepower to destroy specific facilities like ball-bearing factories. Deploying 300 B-7s to drop 1,200 tons of ordnance could effectively obliterate such a target. The strategic bombing campaign during the war employed a multifaceted approach to target selection. While area-based strikes against cities, rail yards, and industrial zones proved effective, the mission planners soon recognized the limitations of this tactic. Certain high-value objectives, such as submarine pens, massive viaducts, and underground bunkers, required a more focused, penetrative strike capability that the B-17 bomber simply could not provide. The immense size and weight of the Grand Slam bomb, nearly twice the length of the B-17's bomb bay and accounting for over half the aircraft's total payload capacity, made it an impractical option for this specialized targeting. The B-17, though an exceptional aircraft designed for a specific operational role, was ultimately constrained by its inherent physical characteristics and could not be easily modified to accommodate such extreme ordnance requirements. The Lancaster bomber materialized as a result of the British military's strategic gamble in 1940, prioritizing increased payload capacity over other capabilities. Roy Chadwick's design team at AVO set out to surpass the B-7's carrying capacity threefold, rather than merely matching it. The resulting aircraft was a four-engine heavy bomber with a singular focus, maximizing bomb load and versatility. All other factors, from defensive armaments to crew accommodations and operational range, took a backseat to the imperative of delivering maximum destructive force. The Lancaster's internal weapons compartment was a groundbreaking design, stretching an impressive 33 feet from the cockpit to well behind the wings. This cavernous cavity could accommodate ordnance that other aircraft deemed too massive for aerial deployment. The standard configuration allowed for a hefty 14,000-pound bomb load, already exceeding the capabilities of the B-7. However, Chadwick and his team envisioned even greater potential. They engineered the bomb bay doors to be removable and replaceable with downward extending fairings, further expanding the internal volume. This innovative approach pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aerial munitions delivery. The Lancaster bomber underwent a remarkable transformation in 1942, gaining the ability to accommodate weapons up to 33 feet long and carry weights that defied conventional aerodynamic principles. The structural engineering behind this achievement was truly extraordinary. The aircraft's fuselage employed a geodetic-inspired design, featuring massive load-bearing longerons running the entire length of the airframe. The wings were attached to a central structural node, which distributed the weight across multiple stress points rather than concentrating it on a single beam. This innovative approach allowed the Lancaster to withstand asymmetric loads and extreme shifts in the center of gravity that would have torn apart other bombers. When a massive 22,000-pound Grand Slam bomb was suspended beneath the Lancaster, the aircraft's center of gravity shifted dramatically aft and downward. Despite these dramatic changes, the Lancaster's landing, the mighty Lancaster bomber was engineered to withstand the immense stresses of its missions. Its airframe was designed from the ground up to endure the punishing loads it would face. Powering this formidable aircraft were four legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, each producing a staggering 1,280 horsepower. Together, these four powerhouses generated a colossal 5,120 horsepower, enabling the Lancaster to lift off with a maximum takeoff weight of 72,000 pounds. When loaded with the massive Grand Slam bomb, the aircraft would operate at weights exceeding 70,000 pounds, pushing the limits of its engines and airframe. This increased the length of the takeoff run and reduced the climb rate, but the Lancaster's robust design ensured it could handle these extreme conditions. The Lancaster Bomber underwent significant modifications to accommodate the colossal Grand Slam bomb. Reaching a mere 200 feet at a speed of 13 minutes per mile, the aircraft still managed to take to the skies, a testament to its engineering prowess. Beyond the bomb bay, the engineers made further adjustments. They removed the mid-upper gun turret to shed weight and reduce drag. Armor plating that shielded the crew was also stripped away. Some missions even flew with diminished fuel reserves, sacrificing range to enable the transport of the immense ordnance. These were compromises the Americans would have been unwilling to make. The USAF's doctrine prioritized crew safety and defensive capabilities, but the British faced distinct constraints in 1945 as the war neared its end. Conventional bombing could not reach certain targets, necessitating the Lancaster's transformation. The Lancasters of 617 Squadron, the renowned Dam Busters, possessed a remarkable capability unmatched in the Allied arsenal. By March 1945, fewer than 30 of these aircraft had been specially modified to carry the colossal Grand Slam bomb. This immense ordnance could be delivered with pinpoint precision, a formidable weapon of unprecedented size and power. The Bierfield Viaduct, constructed between 1845 and 1847, had become a symbol of both German engineering prowess and Allied frustration. This massive railway bridge, with its 23 stone arches spanning the Johannesbach Valley in northwest Germany, represented a significant logistical challenge for the Allied forces. The Bierfield Viaduct, a colossal Prussian-engineered structure standing at an impressive 50 feet and 14.25 meters in height, had withstood the test of time, surviving an astonishing 54 separate bombing raids by March 1945. The Royal Air Force had unleashed over 3,500 tons of conventional explosives upon it, while American B-17s and B-24s had also joined the relentless assault. The surrounding landscape bore the scars of these bombardments, with craters dotting the fields and sections of the track having been hit and repaired countless times. Yet, the viaduct's massive stone arches remained steadfast, continuing to carry German military traffic towards the shrinking front lines. This was not merely about a single bridge. The Bierfield Viaduct had become a symbol of the shortcomings of strategic bombing against hardened infrastructure. No matter how much ordnance was expended, the structure refused to yield, standing as a testament to the engineering prowess of its Prussian designers and the resilience of its construction. The 19th-century viaduct's sturdy construction, with its 3-foot-thick arches, proved resistant to conventional bombing. Even direct hits from 2,000-pound bombs merely chipped the stone, unable to compromise the structure's massive, well-engineered solidity. On March 13, 1945, 617 Squadron received a unique order. A single Lancaster bomber, carrying a specialized, Grand Slam, earthquake bomb, would undertake a solo mission against this formidable target, without the usual fighter escort or formation support. The viaduct's efficient weight distribution and sheer scale rendered surface explosions ineffective. Conventional bombing could not deliver the concentrated, penetrating force required to destroy the 19th-century stonework. This specialized mission, deviating from standard bomber command protocols, aimed to target a specific structural weakness and bring down the entire viaduct with a single, precisely placed strike. The Lancaster bomber embarked on a daring mission, soaring to unprecedented heights to deliver the colossal Grand Slam bomb. Defying standard protocol, the aircraft climbed to an astonishing 20,000 feet, far exceeding the typical altitude for precision strikes. The advanced Mark 15 bomb sight would guide the visual bombing run, conducted in broad daylight, a stark contrast to conventional doctrine. Yet, with standard tactics having failed 54 times before, the crew knew they had to take bold action. On the morning of March 14, the skies over Lincolnshire were remarkably clear, a stroke of rare fortune for such a precision operation. The Lancaster, callsign Aaron 945, struggled into the air, its 22,000-pound payload dragging the aircraft down. The climb to operational altitude took 45 minutes, the 4 Merlin engines straining to gain the necessary height. The massive Lancaster bomber strained against the heavy load as it raced across the German border, alone in the hostile skies. By March 1945, the Luftwaffe's remaining aircraft were largely grounded due to fuel shortages, allowing the bomber to proceed unimpeded. At 12:47, the Bierfield Viaduct came into view, and the pilot steadied the aircraft at 20,000 feet as the bomb army prepared to release the colossal Grand Slam weapon from the open bay. Finally, at 12:49, the massive ordnance plummeted towards its target. The Grand Slam plummeted from the sky with astonishing speed, almost vanishing from sight in an instant. Roughly 40 seconds later, the immense weight of the colossal bomb slammed into the earth near the viaduct's foundation, burrowing deep underground before detonating. The explosion that followed was not the typical fiery blast of conventional munitions, but rather a powerful, undulating shockwave that reverberated through the very ground itself. Pilot Banks had maneuvered the Lancaster bomber swiftly to distance the aircraft from the blast zone, unsure of what to expect from this unprecedented strike on the bridge. 2 of the viaduct's massive stone. The Bierfield Viaduct's arches crumbled instantly, their foundations shattered by subterranean forces they were never engineered to withstand. A 200-foot section plummeted into the valley below. The events unfolding beneath the viaduct in those fleeting moments after impact reveal why the Grand Slam succeeded where thousands of tons of conventional bombs had failed. This was not merely about explosive power, but rather the intricate interplay of physics, timing, and the behavior of shock waves in diverse mediums. When a standard 1,000-pound bomb detonates on the surface, approximately 95% of its energy dissipates into the air. The resulting blast, heat, and fragmentation radiate outward in a spherical pattern, but only a minuscule fraction of that force actually penetrates. The Grand Slam, a colossal aerial munition, operated on radically distinct principles compared to conventional surface explosives. Descending from an altitude of 20,000 feet, this formidable weapon harnessed the power of aerodynamics and gravity, transforming into a devastating kinetic projectile before detonation. Its streamlined, teardrop-shaped design with a reinforced steel nose cone was engineered to minimize air resistance and achieve terminal velocities approaching the speed of sound, around 750 miles per hour, upon impact. In contrast to the spectacular but relatively ineffective surface blasts of standard explosives against sturdy stone structures, the Grand Slam's sheer kinetic force proved devastatingly effective against even the most formidable fortifications built upon deep foundations. The colossal mass of the Grand Slam bomb, weighing in at 22,000 pounds, generated immense kinetic energy upon impact, measured in the millions of foot-pounds. This was no ordinary falling ordnance. It punched through the Earth's surface like a celestial projectile. Barnes Wallis, the bomb's designer, had specified a critical feature: a one-piece forged steel casing with walls thick enough to withstand the tremendous forces that would shatter standard bomb casings. When the Grand Slam struck the soil, clay, and rock at a velocity of 750 mph, the nose cone compressed slightly but maintained its structural integrity, transforming the weapon into a self-excavating projectile that burrowed downward. The bomb's sheer momentum enabled it to penetrate layers of earth that would have stopped conventional munitions in their tracks. Post-war soil mechanics research revealed the remarkable capabilities of this extraordinary weapon. The 20-inch Grand Slam typically penetrated between 90 and 130 feet, depending on the ground composition. In the Bierfield case, geological surveys suggested a penetration depth of approximately 95 feet before the fuse triggered detonation. The earthquake effect began when 135 pounds of Torpex explosive detonated 95 feet underground. Unlike air, which compresses easily and absorbs shock waves, the solid earth transmitted the seismic energy with brutal efficiency. The explosion created a ground-rolling shock wave that traveled along the surface, while simultaneously generating compression waves moving through the subsurface. This combination produced effects akin to an earthquake. The historic Vioidiac railway viaduct, constructed in the 1840s, was engineered to withstand the vertical forces exerted by locomotives and freight cars traversing its stone arches. However, the structure was not designed to endure the vertical acceleration generated by seismic activity. When a powerful tremor struck the region, the viaduct's foundations experienced an abrupt upward thrust, followed by a rapid downward motion as the ground heaved and settled. The rigid stone arches, unable to flex as the seismic wave passed, saw their carefully balanced geometry disrupted. Mortar joints that had held firm for over a century now cracked under the strain, as the viaduct was subjected to forces it had never been intended to withstand. The structure's once advantageous camouflage became a liability, as various components shifted at divergent paces. The underground cavity spawned by the detonation added another layer of devastation. The Grand Slam's explosive force vaporized everything within approximately 40 feet of the blast's epicenter, carving a spherical void in the earth. As the shockwave dissipated, that cavity partially collapsed, triggering secondary ground shifts that persisted for several seconds after the initial blast. Foundations that had initially withstood the explosion soon found themselves unsupported, suspended over newly formed voids. This is why observers reported the viaduct's gradual sagging and crumbling, as if the ground beneath it had given way. The American and British approaches to heavy bombing during the war were not simply a matter of aircraft capabilities. Rather, they reflected divergent philosophies on how to leverage aerial power for strategic advantage. While the American B-17 formations delivered a greater overall bomb load, the British Grand Slam strikes embodied a distinct theory of destruction, risk tolerance, and strategic objectives. Whereas 5 B-17s might carry 20,000 to 25,000 pounds of ordnance, a single Grand Slam equaled that weight, underscoring the contrasting doctrines underpinning each nation's bombing campaigns. The aerial assault would involve a coordinated strike by 5 aircraft, with the bombs dispersed across a horizontal span of 300 to 500 feet. Each bombardier would independently aim using the Norden bombsight, though achieving precision from an altitude of 25,000 feet was more aspiration than certainty. Even with skilled crews and ideal conditions, the circular error probable, the radius within which 50% of bombs would land, typically exceeded 1,000 feet. Essentially, the 5 B-17s were effectively carpet bombing a quarter-mile circle, relying on the target being somewhere within that zone. The distribution pattern was a critical factor in analyzing the actual destructive impact. Those 20,000 bombs would not be. The Royal Air Force's arsenal included an assortment of ordnance, ranging from 500-pound general-purpose bombs to hefty 1,000-pound variants, and even incendiary devices. These explosives were meticulously selected based on the target's characteristics. When detonated on or near the surface, each bomb would create its own crater and blast zone. This saturation bombing approach proved highly effective against soft targets, such as wooden structures or railway marshalling yards, where the concentrated firepower would devastate the entire area within a quarter-mile radius. However, against hardened objectives like submarine pens, viaducts, or reinforced bunkers, the scattered surface damage had a minimal structural impact. The analogy of throwing a handful of gravel at a stone wall versus swinging a sledgehammer at a single point aptly illustrates the contrast in effectiveness. The mighty Lancaster Bomber, with its impressive payload capacity, was a formidable asset in the aerial campaign. The sledgehammer tactic, known as slam, offered a distinct advantage. By 1945, the elite crews of 617 Squadron had mastered the art, achieving circular error probables under 300 feet from an altitude of 20,000 feet. The true power of this approach lay in the 22,000-pound explosive force concentrated at a single point, penetrating depths unreachable by conventional bombs. The destructive mechanism was not surface blast, but rather subsurface shockwave and foundation collapse, causing the target to crumble from within. This strategy differed significantly from attempts to destroy structures from the outside. The risk calculation was another key distinction, as 5 B-7s would commit 50 aircrew members to the mission. The American approach embraced greater risk by dispersing it across numerous aircraft and crew, believing that massive bomber formations could overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers. In contrast, the Lancaster Grand Slam mission concentrated all resources into a single aircraft, crew, and munition. If that lone bomber fell to flak or mechanical issues, the entire operation would collapse, and the irreplaceable Grand Slam would be lost. However, by March 1945, the Luftwaffe's air defenses had deteriorated to the point where solo precision strikes had become viable, prompting the RAF to adopt this strategy. The capability to annihilate targets that mass formations couldn't reach came at a price. The financial analysis reveals another facet of the story. In 1945, manufacturing a Grand Slam projectile cost approximately $4,000, an exorbitant sum by British wartime standards, equivalent to several months' earnings for a skilled laborer. Yet, this expense paled in comparison to the costs of organizing and executing hundreds of bomber sorties against targets impervious to conventional means. The Burfeld Viaduct, for instance, had withstood 54 prior attacks. Quantifying the aircraft, bombs, and aircrew lives expended in these futile attempts underscores the cost-effectiveness of the earthquake bomb. When accounting for operational expenditures, this specialized munition became. The Grand Slam's operational lifespan was fleeting, with only 41 units deployed between March and May 1945. Yet, its impact on military technology reverberated for decades. As the war concluded, Allied intelligence teams fanned out across captured German territory, meticulously documenting the bomb damage. Their findings at sites like Bierfield, the Ensberg Viaduct, and the Valentine submarine pen fundamentally transformed military planning approaches to hardened targets. The earthquake bomb concept demonstrated that depth of penetration, rather than surface explosive yield, was the critical factor for certain target categories. This lesson endured long after the Lancasters were retired. The Grand Slam's retirement marked a pivotal shift, as its legacy migrated into the realm of Cold War weapons development. This evolution eventually culminated in the precision-guided munitions that define modern air power. Interestingly, the United States Air Force, initially skeptical of super-heavy bombs during the war, quickly reversed course in the aftermath. In 1946, American engineers commenced a detailed study of the Grand Slam's design and the damage reports from its missions. This investigation led to the creation of the T-12 Cloudmaker, a colossal 43,600-pound American earthquake bomb that took the concept even further. Although the T-12 never saw combat, being developed too late for World War II and never utilized in Korea, its very existence demonstrated that American military doctrine had absorbed the lessons Britain had showcased. The clear implication was that specialized weapons were now a necessity. The specialized ordnance that emerged as pivotal during the Cold War era directly traced its lineage to Wallace's pioneering earthquake bombs. As NATO strategists contemplated the heavily fortified Soviet command centers and missile silos, they recognized that conventional explosives were woefully inadequate. The Soviets had constructed facilities with 20 to 30 feet of reinforced concrete overhead, sometimes buried beneath additional layers of earth and rock. The only viable option for threatening these hardened installations was through the deployment of deep penetrating munitions capable of punching through the overhead protection or, in the case of the Grand Slam, circumventing it by attacking from below. The American Blue 109 bunker buster bomb was one such specialized weapon. The 1980s saw the introduction of a specialized munition featuring a hardened steel casing and tailored fusing to breach concrete before detonation. This approach mirrored the pioneering work of Wallace 4 decades prior. The logical progression of this concept manifested in modern precision-guided ordnance, combining penetration capabilities with GPS guidance. Developed during the 1991 Gulf War to target Iraqi command bunkers, the 5,000-pound GBU-28 could penetrate over 20 feet of concrete or 100 feet of earth. The 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, deployed in 2011, was designed to destroy deeply buried facilities beyond the reach of previous conventional weapons. These advanced munitions trace their lineage directly back to the Grand Slam. The Lancaster bomber's groundbreaking design, pioneered by the renowned engineer Barnes Wallis in 1945, revolutionized the concept of aerial warfare. By prioritizing the weapon's weight, durability, and accuracy over defensive capabilities, the Lancaster demonstrated that even the most formidable targets could be effectively neutralized. This innovative approach had a profound impact on the development of post-war bomber design, particularly in Britain. The Avro Vulcan, one of the country's iconic V-bombers tasked with carrying nuclear weapons during the Cold War, directly inherited the Lancaster's emphasis on payload flexibility over defensive armament. With minimal guns, the Vulcan's cavernous bomb bay could accommodate a diverse array of ordnance, including nuclear gravity bombs, conventional iron bombs, and even anti-ship missiles. This design philosophy, which favored maximizing the payload over self-defense, became a defining characteristic of the Vulcan and other subsequent bomber aircraft. The Lancaster bomber's enduring impact extends beyond its technological advancements. It demonstrated the necessity of tailored solutions for specific targets, rather than relying solely on existing capabilities. This doctrinal shift has influenced modern air forces, which now maintain specialized weaponry for diverse mission requirements. From bunker-busting munitions for hardened facilities to thermobaric arms for cave complexes and penetrating warheads for underground tunnels, the principle of employing the right tool for the job has become a fundamental tenet. The Lancaster's ability to carry payloads too large for any other Allied aircraft underscored this lesson, which continues to resonate in the preserved museum exhibits where visitors marvel at the bomber's distinctive bomb bay. Massive aerial armaments, not mere handfuls, defined the capabilities of the era's warplanes. Yet the core lesson endures. Payload capacity and weapon specialization can outweigh sheer numerical strength in aerial combat. The Lancaster bomber's ability to transport what 5 B-17s could not stemmed from its tailored design solving problems its counterparts struggled with. This critical distinction proved pivotal when it counted most.